All right, so we already talked about quadratic inequalities, but the ones that we talked about were factorable. Today we're going to talk about quadratic equalities that are non-factorable. And so we have to consider both real and imaginary solutions. So let's take the real solutions first. So here's an example. Again, you might try quickly to factor this to see if it's factorable, but you'll find that it is not. So you're going to go to the quadratic formula or completing the square, and you're going to figure out what x is. So you get x is -1 plus or minus the square root of 65 over 4. Just like when you had your factorable ones, you're going to put this on a number line. Now, obviously, -1 minus the square root of 65 will be to the left of -1 plus the square root of 65. You're going to test intervals just like you did before. So if I put in -100 into my equation, the -100 squared would be a big positive number. So in this interval, it'll be positive. In this interval, it'll be negative. Again, 0 would be between these numbers. So if I plugged in 0, I'd get -8. And then it would be positive here. I'm looking for where this is greater than 0. So I'm looking for where it's a positive number. So here and here is where it's positive. So my solutions will be in this area and in this area, which will be an OR. So my solution will be x is less than -1 minus the square root of 65 over 4, or it's greater than that. Let's try another one. So we have this one here, and you're going to put it into the quadratic formula, and you're going to get an answer, 3 plus or minus the square root of 41 over 2. You're going to put it on a number line. And again, you're going to test your intervals. So again, over here, it's going to be positive. If I plug in 0, it'll be negative. If I plug in a big positive number, it'll be positive again. But now I'm looking for where is it less than or equal to 0. So now I'm looking for negative numbers. So it will be negative in this area, which is between these two. So I'm going to write it as a conjunction. Remember, a conjunction is always written with the smaller number to the left, the bigger number to the right, and less than or equal signs in between. All right, here's another example. You're going to try and factor it, but you're going to find out that it's not factorable. And now you have a little bit of a different scenario where now you have a negative underneath the radical. These are actually a little bit easier. I like it when I have a negative underneath the radical. As soon as you see a negative underneath the radical, all you have to do is plug in 0. So if you plug in 0 into your original equation right here, this would be 0, this would be 0, and you'd end up getting 5 is greater than 0. If that's a true statement, your answer will be all real numbers. If it's a false statement, then your answer is no solution. So these are actually a little bit easier. The only thing is you always have to remember if you have a negative underneath the radical, you immediately have to go plug in 0. You don't have to do any other work. So let's try another one. All right, so again, I immediately get a negative underneath the radical, so I can stop right there. I don't have to go to my number line. I'm just going to plug 0 in to my equation, and I'm going to get 4 is less than or equal to 0. That is a false statement, so my answer will be no solution. Now let's take a look at graphing. So now if you wanted to graph these, you're going to graph it just like you would any other quadratic. You know that your vertex is 2, 5. So you're going to do your vertex is 2, 5. It opens down and you have an a value of 2. So you're going to go over 1, down 2. And then you're going to reflect that number. And you're going to keep going and you have a beautiful little parabola here. It's greater than or equal to, so I have a solid line. If it was just greater than, I'd have a dotted line. But now you have to decide which side you're going to shade. So what I do is I pick a point on my graph. I like to pick 0, 0 because that's an easy one to plug in. But in this case, 0, 0, it's hard to tell which side of the graph that is on. So I'm going to pick a different number, and it doesn't matter what number you pick. I'm going to pick 2, 0. So I arbitrarily pick 2, 0. I'm going to plug that x and y into my equation. I'm going to find out if I have a true or a false statement. 0 is greater than or equal to 5. Well, that's a false statement, so I know that the numbers in here cannot be part of my solution. So I know that my solution is going to be everywhere else. If you have any questions, let me know.